Hey, we're Matt and Julie Beamer with Jonathan and Elizabeth Beamer, and we are celebrating 30 years of living and ministering overseas. And to do that, we're going to be sharing stories both today, Club 1040 Day, and throughout the year coming. We'll be dropping different stories, different podcasts, and things like that to show you how your investment in Club 1040 is making an impact throughout the Middle East and North Africa, and to talk about how by the year 2030, we want to see that impact expand and continue in a strong and more quick way. So make sure you don't miss out, and also help us out by sharing these with your friends as well. Spread the word, because the more we get this word out, the more we can do, the more quickly we can do it together. God bless. But that's what you want to do. But you're like, first I want to do 1 year of regular high school. This then meant that you could come to Tulsa. You're like, I'm like, where? And you're like, well, it makes sense to do it in Tulsa because that's where grandma and grandpa are and family is and stuff. Okay. So we began to explore that, and that worked out good. You talked about helping us because you could drive. You were 18 years old. It meant that Elizabeth could also kind of be here more often and go to school here too. So you started your sophomore year here. Mm-hmm. So you guys are now locally in Oklahoma, but you don't know much of anybody. You still are kind of, it's all new, and incomes.
We were here pretty much alone most of the time too. We had grandparents and some family around, but yeah pretty much alone.
You guys were traveling a lot.
Got good at signing your name for
signing your name.
Signing my name and Julie's mom's name for your own
reading
permission
reports.
slips.
Yeah.
But then someone special came as the welcome committee, and that's Michelle. So tell us from your side.
My side was, so my grandparents have supported Club 1040 for years. And so I always had the family brochure on the refrigerator at Margie and Wileen's house. And I remember, like, there was this one photo shoot you guys did that was very skinny jeans. Julie had like the black eyeliner. It was very serious. It was out in the hills somewhere. Or maybe it was in the city.
It was in Michigan.
It was in Michigan at the beach. Yeah.
We've done a few moody ones. There might've been one moody one in England that we did like that. Mm-hmm. And then there was one in Michigan.
But to be clear, Jonathan was wearing skinny jeans, straightening his hair, V-necks for a couple good years.
So that's the picture of John that I had, was skinny jeans, straightening hair. He had glasses at some point. Yeah. So what I knew of him was that. So I remember even telling my grandma Wileen one day, I was like, I would never date him. Like, that is not my style. And so my family had a background with the Beamers for so long, which I think it's just such a powerful thing. I had known them in concept. I had known them in heart and in vision, and knew that we all shared like the same faith. But I didn't know who he was personally until he started going to Broken Arrow High School, our senior year of high school. So the senior year of high school, they moved here the summer before, and did you start going to youth group as well? Mm-hmm. So they started going to youth group, and that was my life. Like, the beautiful thing about me being in Tulsa full time my whole life was that I got to be planted in church, and we never missed an event. We never missed Sunday morning. We were in school of the Bible. I literally, anything you can think of, my parents were volunteering and I was volunteering, and that is such a blessing. And so I was really involved in the youth group. And so that's whenever I initially had met him, where he was like sitting by himself, didn't really want to talk to anybody. And I loved also to go to school events. And so beginning of school year, you have football seasons coming up. And so I invited them to come, Elizabeth and John, to come to a football game. And he was like, no, like, that's not for me. And I said, okay, I'll pick you up at 6. And that Friday, I picked him and Elizabeth up and took them to the football game. And that's really where our relationship started.
Which was funny because you showed up with your like Alabama keychain. You had like red cowgirl boots, like a, baseball hat, and he's there still in his like V-neck skinny jean phase. And I'm like, what is happening?
Yeah, we're very, very two different people in a great way. Like, I I played soccer my whole life, very outdoorsy family, and that just reflected in my attitude and in my dress. Like, I did not care to dress up. Like, I wore sweatpants and t-shirts to school. I just really, like, that was me. And so knowing them, like, it's amazing. Like, growing up in ministry and like growing up in England, I think had a big part to play in it. You dressed up.
Yeah.
Like, you put effort into wearing makeup and having your hair done. And that's just like not something that I did. So it was a very drastic, physically drastic difference in our lifestyles and relationship.
Mm-hmm. But I also dress very bland. So I was black, gray, no colors, and she wears reds and fun things, and she doesn't mind painting, face paint and stuff like that, and that's just not my style.
Which is exactly what you needed. Someone to slather face paint on you and be like, come on, let's go to the football game.
I remember we were in the stands at the football game, and he said, I had black paint all over my face, and I'm cheering, and John's just there in the back, straight face, nothing going on, and everybody's like, wow, football.
Yep.
And you had made it kind of you'd made the commitment to...
I had already enlisted and signed the papers. And so I knew 360 days pretty much I was leaving. So I didn't even want to know anybody. I was like, I'm gone. I know what's happening, so I don't need
You were just like, keep your head down, get through school, and then go.
Yeah.
Something, though, that I knew, so when I started to get to know him, I was learning that it's like, I'm joining the military and I'm not building any relationships here. I know where I need to go and nothing's going to distract me. I mean, he would be the guy at school, hood up, coffee in his hand, no relationships. And I am so extroverted. Like, I'm the one down the hallway. You see me coming, you hear me coming. And then there's him in the hallway with his gray hoodie around his head, not talking to anybody. And so he really wasn't my type of person to be attracted to. And I just remember knowing in my heart, I fell in love with him so fast. Like, it wasn't even, part of it was like this mysterious, like, I don't understand why he's not happy, like what's deep down in his heart. But looking back, and even then, I knew it was the Lord drawing me to him, despite how he was trying to defend off relationships. I just was really determined to understand him and be a part of the family. I really felt connected from the beginning, even though it didn't really make sense.
Yeah. And from our standpoint, Julie and I, we were like, this is amazing as you guys started to get close together, because, I mean, if we could have thought of, like, if we could have described the perfect person, like created the perfect person for Jonathan, it would be you, Michelle Witz.
Thank
I mean,
you.
every way, your personality, like you said, the doctrinal alignment, the relational history. One of the most precious things that happened is your mom pulled out, as you guys are getting married, like just a few weeks before you got married, I think, your mom found a picture of how, when we had come back to visit one time when the kids were like, I don't know, Elizabeth
Like
maybe
4,
3 and 4,
yeah.
that kind of thing. Yeah. So that you, your sister, Elizabeth, and Jonathan were all sat together there, and she snapped a picture of it way back before digital cameras, and she still had it.
Yeah.
And the funny bit in the picture is Michelle's not happy about this little
Straight
boy,
face.
little boy. Like, who's this little boy and messing up my afternoon? But she, your mom had said, "I'll watch the kids so you can go and do the meetings with the pastors and stuff that we need to do at that time." And yet now, like, whatever, 20 years later, is you guys are getting married, and it was just amazing in that history. And as you mentioned, your grandfather, one time we had a building project that we needed to do in England, and I had priced it out everywhere. And because it was at a time when all the inflation was going up in England, the prices were priced way beyond. It was basically like nobody wanted to do a church project because they had all these other business going on. And they're like, so if we're going to do it, we're going to do it for 3 times the cost. And I'm like, we cannot afford this. So I called up Ron and I said, hey, you've always said it, you could get a group together to come over and do a building thing. They'd been on a couple other team trips before. And I said, look, we can actually cover everybody's tickets, get as many guys together as possible, and come over here. I need you in 10 days to do 3 months work. And on 2 separate occasions during a project, they came over and they literally did 3 months work in 10 days in both cases. And that's what built the building that now is Go Church Manchester, that has hundreds of people that lives have been transformed because of that. Thousands probably over the years. And so that kind of history, your dad was on those trips, your grandmother were on those trips, that sort of thing. It's so cool to have had those family connections.
Yeah, I have memorabilia from my dad coming back. It's like little England backpacks and England soccer balls. And I look back and life is so intertwined in the weirdest ways, in the best ways. But so in high school, we started seeing each other and it got serious pretty fast. We were just like, I just knew that there was something I needed to commit to. He was in the military, or he had committed to it. I knew he was going to Italy. It was very scary for me because life was everything.
You'd never been on a plane or anything by that point.
At this point, I had never flown before. I had never been out of the country. We did tons of road trips. Like my family, we did a lot of traveling, but more of like, Branson and soccer tournaments. So we did a lot of that, but we never did long distance stuff. And so it was a very insecure feeling to feel so secure in somebody that's taking me out of my comfort zone. And I was I just knew that we needed to be together. And so our parents had saw how quickly we were trying, to date and to be together. And I wish Julie was here to say this part, but you would sit and talk with your mom at the kitchen table, right?
Well, I know one time I had a conversation with him. I said, look, I'm like talking to him. I'm like, you need to go talk to her dad, because I'm like,
I remember that.
I'm like, he's like, we're not dating or anything like that. I'm like, look, if it looks like a date, it sounds like a date, it acts like it's not a raisin. It's a date.
Yeah, that is. I forgot about that. That's true. Yeah.
So the Mexico mission trip, you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So my first flight ever was a mission trip to Mexico, and John decided to go on the trip too. And so the parents had told us we're not allowed to date until after the missions trip to Mexico. And we're like, okay, we can wait until then. So he asked me to prom in Mexico, which is pretty cool. And then on the way back on the airplane is whenever he officially asked me to start dating him and be his girlfriend, which was so special. It was the start of everything.
Sort of prophetic as well. That traveling internationally was significant to the relationship. I want to just a quick point here is Clubton 40. The mission statement is we're a relational missionary movement reaching the unreached, and we say God does everything He does in the earth through relationships. And I can see, a lot of people would say, well, okay, Matt and Julie move over to England. They spent 30 years. We're celebrating 30 years. That's part of why we're doing this, celebrating what God's done over these past 30 years. And having left our family, left our friends, left everything we knew at a time when there wasn't internet and all those things, we kind of in our minds are like, maybe our kids will grow up and never know anybody that we knew. We didn't know those things, but knew in our heart that we're doing the right thing and out of obedience. And yet it's that relational important, that thing, that everything in God's kingdom works through relationships, is He brings it back to the place where now, you guys are married and there's this relational history, and your mom is now even a part of the team, a Clubton 40 team, U.S. team leader. And you guys, you've done a beautiful 1040 team where you've helped to lead teams that way. And so it's so cool to me. And then Elizabeth, you've been in relationship with this family since you were born, and you're involved in the communication side of things, leading that. And to me, it's super cool how the relational aspect of thing is like the currency of the kingdom.
I know. I just think about, like I said, my parents and everybody moving here to Tulsa to go to Bible school, and you guys, what it took for you and Julie to get to Bible school, and then what it took for you guys to get married and my parents to get married, and then for my parents, traveling is hard. Your story it's an testimony of what God can do in your life. But staying in one place and being faithful to a local church, that's its own hard. And my parents have been able to show that and to be incredibly faithful servants here in Tulsa. And for them to be dedicated and stay here as long as they have was the only reason that I was here when he was here. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was like sobbing in the car because choosing to get married and be committed and move to Italy, that was scary because we didn't really know each other. Like, that I just knew I needed to be with you guys, but I didn't understand that. And I remember the exact moment I needed to decide if we were going to stay together or not, because at this point he was already gone. And the Lord dropped it in my heart. He said, if you choose to be with him, I will make you unstoppable. And I have never let that go because I just knew, okay, if I commit to this, and I remember hearing my heart, it's going to be hard. Like I just knew this reality, but I knew that if we said yes and if we committed to it, it was going to be this unstoppable force that would move forward together. And so that's when I dropped out of Bible school. I didn't go to second year right away. I moved to Italy and it changed my life. Like I was ridden with anxiety and fear, and being with him and doing the jump I did it's where God taught me a lot of things. And then I got another sister out of it, and Elizabeth's just amazing. And I've just been able to have a beautiful relationship, and it's so great.
And you were so young too. I don't think a lot of people realize that. You've almost been married 9 years?
10 years in June.
Yeah. So, and you were a week into being 19, both of you, whenever you got married, which is crazy.
Yeah. We were really young, very young, but I needed it. The biggest thing I learned was like, I was so thankful that I grew up in a Christian home, and Tulsa is such a beautiful place to be surrounded by tons of Christians, but I didn't have my own faith. Like my mom was my faith, my church was my faith, but the Lord wasn't what I had my faith in. And when I moved, you take everything away, and then all of a sudden you're left with, where is my faith rooted in? And that's whenever I had to figure out who the Lord was for me. And we had to learn that together. And so being married young is challenging, but we did grow up together, and it was a beautiful thing.
Mm-hmm.
That's awesome. So, and now you've had your first child,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and we're excited for the future. It's going to get even better and better and better. Thank you so much for hanging out with us, hearing some of the stories, and letting us pull back the curtain a little bit and invite you into our family adventures over these last 30 years. It's because of you that Clifton 40 has been able to do anything that we've done. Thank you so much.